Princess Lyravan of the Celestian Empire stood in the royal observatory, her silver skin gleaming under the light of 3 moons, watching the human delegation's ship prepare for departure. Her attendants fluttered nervously behind her, uncertain whether to speak or remain silent. She'd expected triumph. She'd expected vindication. She'd expected Ambassador James Kowalski to come crawling back, apologizing for his presumption, begging for another chance. Instead, he was leaving. "Your Highness," her chief advisor, Lord Velkin, said carefully, "perhaps we should reconsider the trade agreement with Earth." "The agreement stands," Lyravan said coldly. "The human delegation will be replaced. Ambassador Kowalski's departure changes nothing." Except it changed everything. She'd known James for 8 months. He'd arrived as part of Earth's diplomatic corps, tasked with negotiating expanded trade routes between human space and the Celestian Empire. He was different from the other humans, quieter, more thoughtful, with gray eyes that seemed to see straight through all her carefully constructed defenses. They'd clashed immediately. She'd found him frustratingly direct, unimpressed by her title, willing to argue with her about everything from trade tariffs to philosophical concepts. He'd treated her like an equal, not a princess. And somehow, over those 8 months, she'd fallen in love with him, not that she'd admitted it, not even to herself. Because Princess Lyravan didn't fall in love with humans. She had duty, responsibility, and a long list of politically appropriate suitors from noble Celestian houses. When James had finally worked up the courage to tell her he loved her, to ask if there might be something between them, she'd done what any good princess would do. She'd laughed in his face, told him he was delusional, that a human, a short-lived, politically insignificant human, could never be anything more than a useful trade partner. That he should be grateful she tolerated his presence at all, let alone entertained his ridiculous romantic notions. She'd been cruel, deliberately, devastatingly cruel, because that was easier than admitting she felt the same way. Easier than facing the scandal, the political ramifications, the disappointed expectations of her family and her empire. She'd expected him to argue, to plead his case, to fight for her. Instead, he'd looked at her with those gray eyes, hurt, but also something else. Something like pity. "I'm sorry you feel that way, Your Highness," he'd said quietly. "I hope someday you find the courage to choose your own happiness over everyone else's expectations. For what it's worth, I think you deserve better than what you're settling for." Then he'd bowed formally, requested an immediate transfer, and started packing. That had been 3 days ago. 3 days during which Lyravan kept expecting him to come back, to apologize for his emotional outburst, to accept his place as someone who could admire her from a distance but never touch her. But he hadn't come back, and now his ship was leaving. "Your Highness," Velkin tried again. "Ambassador Kowalski was instrumental in the trade negotiations. His replacement may not have the same rapport with our council." "Then they will develop new rapport," Lyravan snapped. "The Empire does not bend to the whims of individual diplomats, no matter how effective they may be." On the landing platform below, she could see a small figure walking toward the ship. Even at this distance, she recognized James's stride, unhurried, purposeful, carrying nothing but a single bag. He was really leaving. The realization hit her like a physical blow. He was leaving, and she would never see him again, never spar with him over breakfast meetings, never catch him smiling at something she said, never feel her heart's race when he walked into a room. She'd thrown it all away because she'd been too afraid to choose him. "Prepare my transport," she said suddenly. Velkin's skin pulsed shocked yellow. Your Highness, I said prepare my transport now. But the human is leaving. Surely you don't mean to? Are you questioning a direct order? No, Your Highness, immediately. But by the time her transport was ready, by the time she'd navigated through the palace and reached the landing platform, James's ship was already in the upper atmosphere. She'd missed him. Lyravan stood on the empty platform, staring up at the sky where the ship had vanished, and felt something crack inside her chest. For the first time in her carefully controlled life, she'd wanted something more than duty, and she'd let fear rob her of it. Your Highness, Velkin approached cautiously. Perhaps it is for the best. A human match would have been complicated. Leave me, Lyravan said, her voice hollow. Your Highness, I said leave me. Velkin bowed and retreated. Lyravan stood alone on the platform as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose that reminded her painfully of the first evening she and James had spent talking in the gardens, debating the ethics of interstellar commerce until the stars came out. She'd expected him to beg. Instead, he'd walked away with his dignity intact and his heart on his sleeve. And she was the one left behind, drowning in regrets. 3 months passed. Lyravan threw herself into her duties with renewed intensity. She attended every council meeting, reviewed every trade agreement, appeared at every ceremonial function. She was the perfect princess, beautiful, gracious, utterly dedicated to the empire. She was also miserable. The new human ambassador was competent but unremarkable. The trade agreements proceeded without the innovative solutions James had always found. Everything was adequate, acceptable, exactly as it should be. And it was killing her. You're being ridiculous, her sister, Lady Saralyn, said one evening over dinner. It's been 3 months. You rejected him. He left. It's over. Move on. I'm not. You are. You stare at the stars every night like you're expecting his ship to return. You've turned down 4 excellent marriage proposals, and you're barely eating. Saralyn's expression softened. Lyra, I've never seen you like this. I made a mistake, Lyravan admitted quietly. I was afraid and I hurt someone who didn't deserve it. She couldn't finish the sentence. Loved. Don't be absurd. Lyra, I'm your sister. I know you, and I saw how you were with him, how you smiled more in those 8 months than I'd seen in years, how you actually enjoyed the diplomatic sessions because he was there. Saralyn reached across the table and took her hand. Why didn't you tell him the truth? Because I'm a princess. Because duty comes first. Because you were afraid, Saralyn said gently. Afraid of choosing your own happiness, afraid of what father would say, what the council would say, what the noble houses would think. So you hurt him first before he could hurt you. Lyravan felt tears sting her eyes, a shameful display of emotion. It doesn't matter now. He's gone. He probably hates me, and he should. I was cruel. Then make it right. How? I can't just show up on Earth and... Why not? Saralyn's eyes gleamed with something that looked like mischief. Father is sending me to Earth next month for the cultural exchange program. Come with me. Officially, you'll be there to support diplomatic relations. Unofficially, she smiled. You'll be there to grovel. I don't grovel. Then you'll lose him forever, your choice. Earth was overwhelming. Lyravan had studied human culture extensively, but nothing prepared her for actually being on the planet. The gravity was lighter than Celestia's, the colors more vibrant, the sounds and smells and sheer chaos of it all completely disorienting. The human government had arranged quarters for the Celestian delegation in New Geneva, the diplomatic hub. Lyravan endured the official welcomes, the ceremonial meetings, The endless small talk with politicians and diplomats who all wanted to curry favor with a Celestian princess. But none of them were James. She finally worked up the courage to ask the human liaison officer about him. Ambassador Kowalski, the woman checked her data pad. He's no longer with the diplomatic service. Resigned about 2 months ago. Last I heard, he was teaching xenoanthropology at a university. Cambridge, I think, or was it Oxford? Cambridge. The word meant nothing to Lyravan, but her aide quickly located it. A historic university city about an hour from London. I need to go there, Lyravan announced. Your Highness, your schedule, clear it. But the trade delegations will have to wait, clear my schedule. The trip to Cambridge was arranged with appropriate security and protocol. Lyravan spent the journey rehearsing what she would say, how she would explain, how she would apologize. But when they arrived at the university and found James's office, all her prepared speeches evaporated. He was sitting at a desk covered in papers and tablets, wearing casual human clothing, jeans and a sweater, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. His hair was slightly longer and he had the beginning of a beard. He looked good, happy even. He looked up when she entered and for a moment pure shock crossed his face. Lyra, not your highness, just her name. Hello, James. What are you doing here? I came to apologize. He stared at her for a long moment, then carefully set down the paper he was holding. You came all the way to Earth to apologize. Couldn't you have just sent a formal diplomatic message? Some things shouldn't be said through official channels, and some things shouldn't be said at all. His voice was level, controlled, but she could see the hurt beneath it. Lyra, you made your feelings very clear. You don't need to apologize for being honest. But I wasn't honest. I was afraid. She stepped closer, her hands trembling. You told me you loved me and I panicked, because I love you too, and that terrified me. James's carefully maintained composure cracked. Don't do this. Do what? Say things you don't mean just because you feel guilty. I've spent 3 months trying to get over you. Don't make it harder. I'm not saying things I don't mean. Lyravan's voice broke. I'm saying things I should have said months ago. I love you, James. I was too much of a coward to admit it then, and I've regretted it every single day since. You humiliated me, he said quietly. Laughed at me for having the audacity to think a human could mean anything to a Celestian princess. I know, and I am so sorry. I was cruel because I thought it would be easier to push you away than to face the complications of actually being with you. I thought duty was more important than happiness. I was wrong. James stood up, putting the desk between them. You hurt me, Lyra, really hurt me. And now you show up here months later and expect, what, that I'll just forget it, that we can pick up where we left off. No, I don't expect anything. Lyravan forced herself to meet his eyes. I just needed you to know the truth, that I was wrong, that you were right. I do deserve better than settling for political convenience, and you deserve better than someone who's too afraid to choose you. She turned toward the door, her heart's breaking all over again. Wait, she stopped. James came around the desk, closer than he'd been in months. Why now? Why come here now? Because I couldn't stand it anymore. The pretending, the duty, the perfect princess act. Because I've spent 3 months being exactly what everyone expects me to be, and I've been miserable. Because I realized that you were right, love and courage are a choice, and I choose you even if you don't choose me back. You really mean that? You'd give up your position, your status, your duty, all of it, to be with a human professor. I would give up anything to not lose you again. James searched her face for a long moment. Then slowly he smiled, that warm, gentle smile she'd missed so desperately. You're an idiot, you know that? I'm aware. You broke my heart. I know and I'm sorry. I'm not going to make this easy for you. I don't expect you to. Good. He reached out and took her hand, the first time he'd touched her since she'd rejected him. Because we're going to have to figure out a lot of complicated things. Long distance, cultural differences, political ramifications. I don't care about complicated, I just care about you. Really? Because 3 months ago, complicated was exactly what you were afraid of. I was afraid of a lot of things. I'm trying to be braver. She squeezed his hand. Someone once told me I deserved better than settling. I'm taking their advice. James pulled her closer, his free hand coming up to cup her face. I never stopped loving you, you know. Even when I was angry, even when I tried to move on, I couldn't. You've ruined me for anyone else. Good, Lyravan said and kissed him. It was everything she'd imagined and nothing like she'd expected. He tasted like coffee and possibility, and when he wrapped his arms around her, she felt safer than she'd ever felt in the heavily guarded palace of her childhood. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, James rested his forehead against hers. You know this is going to cause a massive scandal, right? The Celestian princess and the human professor. Let them scandalize. I'm done living for other people's expectations. Your father is going to be furious. Probably. But my sister thinks he'll come around eventually. He wants me to be happy. He just didn't realize happiness could look like this. James laughed softly. And what does happiness look like, specifically? You teaching at your university, me finding work here that actually matters instead of just ceremonial appearances, us figuring out this complicated, messy, impossible thing together. You'd really stay on Earth? I'd stay anywhere you are. See, now you're making grand romantic gestures. Very unprincess-like. Good, I'm tired of being a princess. I'd rather just be Lyra, your Lyra, if you'll have me. James kissed her again, softer this time. I'll have you on one condition. What? Never ever laugh at my feelings again, even if you're scared, even if it's complicated. We talk, we figure it out together, but we don't hurt each other out of fear. Deal? Deal. Good. Now I have office hours in 20 minutes, and I'd really rather not explain to my students why there's a Celestian princess in my office, So introduce me as your girlfriend. James blinked. Just like that. Just like that, unless you'd prefer a different term. No, no, girlfriend is perfect, he grinned. Though fair warning, human students are going to ask a lot of invasive questions. I'll manage. I've handled hostile royal courts. I can handle curious students. 6 months later, Princess Lyravan, now formally known as Professor Lyravan Kowalski, visiting scholar in interspecies relations, stood in front of a lecture hall full of human students, talking about the complexities of Celestian diplomatic culture. James sat in the back row, ostensibly grading papers, but actually just watching his wife teach with obvious pride. They'd gotten married quietly on Earth, with only Saralyn and a few close friends present. The scandal had been exactly as massive as predicted. The Celestian court had been horrified. The noble houses had protested. There had been calls for Lyravan to be stripped of her title. But Emperor Kael'thon had surprised everyone by supporting his daughter's choice. She has served the Empire faithfully for 30 years, he'd announced. She has earned the right to choose her own path, and if that path leads to Earth, to a human husband, to happiness, then I support it. Now Lyravan split her time between Earth and Celestia, working as a bridge between the two cultures in ways that went far deeper than formal diplomacy. She'd found purpose, partnership, and peace. After class, James met her at the front of the lecture hall. "You're getting better at the Earth slang," he said. "Thank you, though I'm still not entirely sure what yeet means. Join the club, I don't think anyone over 30 really knows." She laughed and took his hand. "Ready to go home?" "Always." As they walked across campus together, Lyravan thought about the day she'd stood on that landing platform watching his ship depart, too afraid to chase what she wanted. She'd expected him to beg. Instead, he'd walked away. And in doing so, he'd given her the space to find her own courage, to make her own choice, to realize that love wasn't about grand gestures or perfect timing or political convenience. It was about choosing someone every day, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. She'd chosen James, and he'd chosen her right back. It was messy and complicated and occasionally scandalous. It was also the best decision she'd ever made.